Hello, welcome back. Today as requested a while ago, I will be doing a video on my mental health journey and how to cope and how to stay motivated once you're through the other side of it. As a disclaimer, I'm obviously not a psychiatrist and I'm not qualified to talk about any of the following things in terms of technical means, but I am just a girl telling her personal story, so I hope that doesn't offend anyone or make anyone feel uncomfortable or anything at all. Just a little trigger warning: if you have ever suffered with bad mental health or are suffering now, then this video might not be for you right now. Issues such as anxiety, depression, unhealthy coping mechanisms and suicidal tendencies may be mentioned in this video. So if you feel like hearing about that may trigger you, then please don't watch this video right now. Maybe one day, but maybe right now is not the time to watch this. Please only watch this video if you feel safe to do so, or if you're with someone else and that makes you feel safe. Otherwise, just please be safe, and if you ever need anything, please message me. Even if I don't know you or you don't know me, please, you can always message me if you ever feel alone or anything. No matter what time, what day, it doesn't matter, just message me and I'm more than happy to talk to you about it. You are not on your own throughout any of this, I promise. I guess my journey with mental health started at school. I don't really recall having any sort of, apart from teenageral thing. Teenageral, is that a word? Thing. Apart from teenageral, I keep saying teenageral, is that even a word? No. I don't really remember anything that made it my life really bad and then therefore I had mental health problems. It wasn't as abrupt as that. Apart from being a teenager and going out with people and then being sad when you weren't going out with them anymore, there wasn't anything that happened to me that made me go into this deep pit. It all just happened very quickly and quite randomly actually, which I don't know, maybe it's common, maybe it's not, I'm not really sure. Everyone's story is unique, I suppose. My earliest memory was being at school one night. I went to boarding school, as I've mentioned at some other points, I'm sure. And I was just walking around school one night, I was on the phone to one of my friends, and then I got off the phone and I got this ideology in my head about a certain coping mechanism, and I don't know what happened, but it was as if I went into some sort of trance, and it sounds really cringy and whatever, and people might be like, do you went into a trance? But whatever, this is my experience. And I felt like I was just in this trance, and one minute I was absolutely fine, and then the next minute I'd experienced this coping mechanism, and that was just it then. That was where it started, and it literally came from absolutely nowhere. It was really, really odd. I then started to use this coping mechanism all the time, whenever I was sad or anything, and I just seem to remember getting sadder and sadder and falling deeper and deeper into this darkness, and there wasn't always necessarily a reason why. It just all of a sudden happened, and I'd find myself watching programs which were a bit sad or maybe a bit dark. I used to listen to Daughter if I was sad, and even now, if I can listen to it now and not have any sort of bad memories related to it, but even now I can still listen to it and it gives you a bit of a chill, because I'm like, wow, that music has got such power. I never wanted to be one of those people that was oh, I've got depression, and I never wanted help, ever. I was never willing to get help, and I was just so embarrassed by it. I was so embarrassed by the fact that I was sad, and I was so embarrassed by the fact that I was coping in such an unhealthy way, and I didn't want to get better. I just didn't want to at all. I was like, no. And it's so weird, because when I was so sad, I was just so sad, and I would do anything to make it go away. But then when I was fine, I didn't want the help, and I didn't want to get better. But when school found out how I was coping with things, they called my mum straight away. I was sent straight to the medical centre at school, and my mum drove straight to school and was like, you need to get help. You have to. And she was so upset, and she was just distraught by the whole thing, and was like, you need to get help, like, now. So at that point I didn't really have the option to say no, as I had not only the school behind me trying to get me help, but also my mum and my dad. So I finally got help, and I went to see a counsellor, a lovely counsellor in North Wales, and she then, after being with her for a while, she said that her help wasn't quite enough, and so she sent me to CAMHS. Once I got into there, because it's quite a rigorous process to get yourself there and figured out what help you really need, I was going there twice a week, and they said that maybe it wasn't enough, so I got put on some medication. I got put onto fluoxetine, which are antidepressants. I personally had a really bad experience with that medicine, and I would not recommend it to anyone. I would always try and say to go without and try and do therapy instead, just purely because it really messed with my head. And they always say it gets worse before it gets better, which is true in some cases, but in mine it just got so much worse, like so much worse, and I didn't want to be on the planet anymore, and I didn't want to I didn't want to exist, and it just took me into the darkest place ever, and I had to come off those, and I was trying to take sleeping tablets because I wasn't sleeping very well, and now I've never taken a sleeping tablet since, because I got told that I shouldn't because it makes my head go funny, and I still don't take them. But I was having major problems with my sleep, so that was also a factor. And yeah, I soon came off that. I got told I wasn't allowed to take sleeping tablets anymore, so I came off sleeping tablets, and then came off the fluoxetine and went more down the therapy route. So I'd done CBT already, and that wasn't really working for me, which is when they put me on the medicine. And then once they took me off the medicine, I did DBT. So CBT stands for cognitive behavioural therapy, and DBT stands for dialectical behaviour therapy. DBT was so much better for me personally, and I had to drive to a medical centre every week, and I had to go and sit in a room with other people like me who had similar mental health issues as me, and we would sit down and we would practice mindfulness, and we would practice other ways of coping rather than the ways that we were coping, and ways to pull us out of a rut if we were feeling a certain way. And there was so much to it. So we sat down and we would do an exercise at the beginning of the class. We would do like a mindfulness exercise. We learn like a course essentially in how to look after ourselves and look after your brain and how to cope when the going gets tough. And I honestly can't recommend DBT enough. I was lucky enough to do it twice. I don't know if people usually do it twice, but I went through the course twice just because by the time I'd been through it once, I still wasn't quite up to scratch mentally. So I had to do it again, which was amazing because if anything, it just made me more aware and more knowledgeable of the coping mechanisms that we were learning about. So that was really helpful for me. Also with DBT, I wasn't on my own with that. I was in a group full of people who were the same as me and felt so similar to how I was feeling, and it just made me really realise that I'm not on my own, and that there are people struggling, whether they look like it or not. It doesn't matter who you are, what your sexuality is, what your sex is, what your race is, what your anything is. Everyone has these issues, and yeah, it's just crazy. It just really made me realise. So as well as doing DBT once a week, I also was having a therapy session with my one-to-one CAMHS counsellor a week, and by the time I came out the other end of it, I just knew so much more about how to cope and how to deal with it when it just gets really dark. And I think it's just amazing. Like, the fact that you can get that help is just incredible. If you're ever struggling, just reach out, because there's so much out there. The amount of times I called the Samaritans when I've been in really not a good way. Even recently, I called the Samaritans quite recently, and they are just incredible. Like, so incredible. They're so open to talk and just be there. So there's always help. Like, you're not on your own. You're just not on your own. I finished DBT probably towards the end of school and finished my therapy, and I was getting too old to be in CAMS anymore, and so I was kind of at the end of my road with it, but it was a good thing because I didn't need it anymore. It was a really amazing feeling, but quite bittersweet as well, because I would miss the people that I got to know through it and stuff like that. I left school and then headed to uni, and the depression-y side of things and the coping mechanism kind of just disappeared. And I'd never really had much anxiety before, as far as I was aware. But then when I came to uni, that was kind of when anxiety came in, and it was like, oh, hello, this is a new thing. I've never felt like this before. What is this horrible feeling? I think it was my second year at uni that I just didn't want to go back. And bear in mind, this is something that I absolutely love doing. Like, it's something I have the strongest passion for, but I just didn't want to go back. And I just had this horrible, like, gut-wrenching feeling, which was anxiety, that was just telling me that I wasn't good enough to do this anymore. I shouldn't be doing it. I don't deserve it. Blah, blah, blah. All these, like, crazy thoughts in my head. And I'd never really experienced it before, and I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I feel so worthless. I don't know what to do with myself. Student services at Trinity Larbourne are amazing. They honestly offer you every ounce of help that they've got, in terms of money, in terms of health, in terms of mental health, in terms of housing, everything. And so their counselling service is incredible. I told them I needed help. They emailed me like straight away. We set up a meeting. I had a chat with the lady that runs it there, and then it was like, right, okay, next week you can start. It was just so quick and amazing, and I can't thank them enough for that. It was so good. So I did my counselling at Trinity. It's so funny because when you go to counselling, you bring up so much stuff that you didn't even know was an issue. It's so weird. Like, in your head, you're like, oh, I'm sad because I feel like I'm not good enough to do musical theatre anymore. But then when you actually talk to someone who's completely like new to your problems and doesn't know you, they give you such a big perspective on actually why you might be feeling like this, and it's so interesting. You learn so much about yourself. It's crazy. By the time I finished my counselling at Trinity, I felt like I was okay and that I didn't need that anymore. But it never goes away. I think this is the thing that people often maybe get wrong. It doesn't like just disappear. Like, you do counselling, you do therapy, you take medicine, and it goes away. That's it, never again. Bye-bye. Like, it stays there. It's always going to stay. But it's something that you can learn from, and it's something that you can then talk about and not feel sad every time you bring it up or anxious, because I never used to be able to talk about this kind of stuff. Like, it would just make me burst into tears. So when I was in my first year at Trinity, in our acting lesson, we had to like tell stories about ourselves, and I told a story about my mental health, and that is the first time I had ever said it out loud, ever. And that really, like, I think talking about it for me really just made me normalise it and go, actually everyone has these problems. Like, you're not on your own, and everyone feels this way at one point in their life or another. So I'm lucky enough to sit here today and say that I'm okay, and I'm so thankful for all the help that I got, because if it wasn't for them, I might not be sitting here today doing these videos. And it just means a lot, and I just honestly could just say that talking about it is such a help. It's so helpful. Like, it's so scary and so intimidating, but it is just one of the things that is going to make you feel uncomfortable for just a little bit, but then once you've ripped that band-aid off, it's done, and you can talk about it bit by bit. It doesn't have to all be at once. It's just the idea of it that's scary, but once you stop talking about it, it makes it so much easier. Like, I promise, it makes it so much easier. You're always going to have, I call them down days, and they suck a bit, and it kind of comes back and you go, oh, I thought I was over this, like, why? But everyone has bad days, everyone has down days, and it's just learning how to cope with it and to keep those strategies in your head to be able to just pull upon them when you need them and go, no, just slow down. This is what you need to do to calm your mind. So I'd say some of the best strategies for coping with mental health issues, my number one would be mindfulness. And it's funny I say that because when I first started like therapy and counselling, I hated it so much because I couldn't concentrate, I couldn't really understand it. Mindfulness, essentially, how I perceive it anyway, you focus entirely on something, and then if something else pops into your head while you're focusing on this thing, you have to acknowledge that it's there and then let it go. So say if you're feeling motivated and you're doing work and you're typing away doing your work, and then all of a sudden something pops into your head like, oh, I remember feeling really sad about this thing, you can acknowledge it and say, okay, that thought is there and I know that it's there, but now I'm going to let it go. And you just let it go. And it sounds so much easier said than done, and it is at first, but once you do it more and more and more, it just becomes embedded in your brain. And I find myself quite good at mindfulness now, in that sense that if I'm focused on something or I'm doing something and a negative thought pops into my head, I can just acknowledge it and go, okay, fine, but go away now because I'm doing something else. Go away. Another thing that I find really helpful is meditation, and it might not sit well with everyone, but just sitting down and like taking time for yourself and really focusing on your breathing. Something so simple, but really focusing on your breathing really helps, and it just calms you down. When I do meditation, I like to tense each part of my body, so go up my body from my toes all the way to the tip of my head and tense each body part one by one. And then by the time I've done that, I feel like all of my tension or angst or anger or sadness or whatever I'm feeling that I need to get rid of is gone. So that's like a really good thing to try out. I find that really helpful. Also, like I said earlier, like counselling and helplines are so helpful. Like I literally cannot preach to the choir how much they're just amazing. If you are in a place where you're feeling unsafe in yourself, or just feeling really bad, or even just feeling quite sad or angry or anxious, it's so helpful and it's so much easier said than done, and it's so hard to get yourself that help, but I promise you it will be worth it in the end. You always think that someone's got it worse than you, and your problems don't really matter because someone's always got a bigger problem than you. Now that might be true, but it doesn't make your problems irrelevant, and it doesn't matter what other people are feeling. And when you feel that kind of way, you kind of just have to be selfish and just say, yeah, people might have it worse and people might have it better, but this is how I'm feeling right now and this is what I need to fix. Just be selfish, just a little bit, just a bit. The biggest one I would say is just talking and being open to talk about your stuff that you've got going on. Not all of it, just maybe bit by bit, talking to your friends or your family or anyone, just talking about your issues or writing it down or just getting it out of your head. I think that's the problem, is that when it clogs up your brain and it's too busy, you can't find a way through the smoke, through the darkness. And if you just get it out somehow, either by talking or writing it down or doing whatever you need to do, or drawing or singing or anything, any sort of outlet that you can get that out into, is just so helpful. Someone asked, how do you block someone out if what they are doing bothers you? It's a really good question, especially if you're always surrounded by that person, or even if it's online and that person is just a negative thing to you. If it's a person that's bothering you and that's giving you negative energy, whatever that might mean to you, then you just need to get rid of it. And it sounds so much easier said than done, and like it's so annoying because like when you've been through that stuff and you're out the other end of it, it sounds quite patronising and like obvious what you're saying, that oh well, just get rid of it. I promise you, once you practice strategies such as like mindfulness and meditation and stuff that just bring you back down to earth without having all of that noise in your head, you can rationalize things better. And people in your life that bring you any sort of negativity, just ask yourself why they're in your life in the first place. Whether it's a friend that you're no longer close with, or even if it's a family member and you feel like you can't do anything about that, just ask yourself why they're in your life, what you can do to stop the negativity that they're bringing to you, and if you need them anymore, and if you don't, how can you slowly distance yourself from that person and the negativity that they're bringing to you. And it doesn't just have to be about people, it can be about anything. Like, it can be about a job. If you've got negative energy coming from a job, why are you there? Just ask yourself why you're associated with whatever is bringing you the negativity, and then kind of just go through a little plan and figuring out, okay, well, if it's bringing me negativity, why am I sticking around for it? Do I need this anymore? If not, then why am I still here? Yeah. I hope this was helpful in some kind of way and it wasn't too gory or like heart-wrenching to listen to, because I didn't want to do a video where I got all upset and was like, oh, mental health, because I feel like I've come out the other end of it now where I can talk about it in quite a like natural way. And that doesn't mean that I'm perfect and that I'm fine and that I never get sad and never get anxious and I never think about how my mental health used to be and like start to lure back to that. But I've been clean of any like bad habits or bad ways of thinking for about 4 years. So I think once you get to that point, you go, wow, I've done a lot of work on this. And I'm so stubborn as well. So if I were to go back on all of that work and all of that time, I'd be so upset with myself. So it's more effort than it's worth. So if I just keep on going and don't go back to my old bad habits, then I can just keep that going for a longer period of time. Yeah. I hope this has shed some light on some quite difficult things to talk about, and that it's helped anyone who needed it. And I just can't reiterate enough that I'm here for anyone, even if we don't know each other. I'm here for anyone who wants to talk about this, because sometimes it can be easier talking to someone that you don't know. The amount of people on the internet that I used to talk to on like Tumblr and stuff that I literally had no idea who this person was, but they were going through a similar kind of thing as me. And like, you get a little community of stuff like that when you're feeling that way. So if you're feeling any sort of negative way, please just talk about it, even if not to me. But I'm always here for anyone who ever wants to talk about anything, even if it's positive. You've just got to keep your mind healthy. And remember, it's your brain. It's your brain. Nothing controls it but you. So if there's something going on in there that you don't like, you're the person that will change it. No one else. No matter how overwhelming the darkness is, you're the one that can take that away, because you're in charge. So just stay in charge and stay happy and healthy and be safe. And I love you all. And I hope you like this video. Let me know what you want to see next. Stay safe. Thank you for listening to me ramble on about myself. I would say, I don't know what I'd say.